Welcome back to another fireside chat of Forbes Books Radio. I am Joe Pardavila, and today I'm joined by the founder of Mindvalley and a best-selling New York Times author whose new book, The Buddha and the Badass, is out now. Please welcome Vishen Lakhiani. Hey, Vishen.
Hi, Joe, and hi, everyone watching on Forbes Books. It is an honor to be here.
So, Vishen, give us a little bit of background on yourself, because the minute I saw this press release, I'm like, first of all, an amazing title for a book, The Buddha and the Badass. I mean, how that has never been written before. Has anyone ever written a book that has Buddha and Badass in the title at the same time?
Not that I know. That I know.
Oh, good. I'm sure your team has checked that out already. So tell me about yourself. What brought you to this point in your life where you've written a book, The Buddha and the Badass, completely shifting the mindset of how we work in 2020 and beyond?
Well, I'll put it this way, Joe. Firstly, this book is controversial because it talks about spirituality applied to the workplace. 5 years ago, if I'd spoken about some of these ideas, I would have been completely slammed. But today, the world has changed. For example, in Silicon Valley, in February, just before quarantine hit, I remember talking to a really well-known American entrepreneur. I don't have liberty to say his name, but this is a guy who's built $1 billion company. And he mentioned something really interesting to me. He said, in this day and age, any Silicon Valley CEO who is not tapping into altered states through meditation or plant medicine is at a competitive disadvantage. Think about that, right?
Yeah.
The world is changing. If you're running a company today, you are under so much stress. You have to make decisions on the fly. Anything you can do to improve your ability to tap into your gut instinct, to get your brain moving with fluid ease is going to give you that edge, because when you're right at the top, every decision you make can impact millions of dollars. Now, what if there was a way where you can tap into, for lack of a better word, your spiritual core to make better decisions? The Buddha and the Badass explores 9 different ways that merge business and spirituality. I was inspired to write this book 10 years ago, actually. I was reading an interesting essay by the great American philosopher Ken Wilber. And if you haven't heard of Ken Wilber, he's the guy who popularized integral theory, spiral dynamics. He's the most cited living philosopher and the most translated living philosopher, I believe, as well. He's been quoted by everyone from Bill Clinton to Kermit the Frog. Now, Ken Wilber wrote a famous essay called Egolessness. And in that essay, he said this. He was writing about this idea we have that the great spiritual sages of the past, from Jesus to Moses, were peaceful men and women who went into introspection and sought to explore the world within it. He said, no, these were people with a massive ego, and he means ego in a good way.
Right.
He said this: the great spiritual sages, from Jesus to Moses to Padmasambhava, were not feeble-minded milquetoast. They were movers and shakers, from bullwhips in the temple to rattling entire continent. They moved the world with the force of their ego. And he goes on to describe the idea that to be truly spiritual, it doesn't mean you sit in endless introspection. It means you use these abilities within you to go forth and change the world. Now, in our world today, there is a problem. Many people believe that to be spiritual means to step back, to not take part in protest, to not want to go and build a company. And then there are people who believe that they want to disrupt, they want to shake the world, they want to change things, they want to create new ways of life. One is the Buddha, one is the badass. The Buddha without the badass becomes weak. They may explore their inner world, but how are they contributing to the benefit of humanity? The badass without the Buddha will go through obstacle, stress, overwhelm, without knowing how to tap into the necessary reservoir of skills we have to sail past that, to develop extreme grit, to develop the ability to be immune to overwhelm. When you merge both, what you have is the recipe for someone who can truly lead a business or lead a country, change the world without breaking themselves.
It's funny that you mentioned the whole spirituality, especially in the corporate world, because I was just talking to Victor Ho, who is the CEO of 5 Stars, and he told me a story that many years ago, when he started out on Wall Street, him and one of his coworkers decided to start a prayer group. And when they started the prayer group at the office, they were the only 2 guys in there for like the first 2 or 3 years. But then slowly but surely, people started to show up, hop in every once in a while. Like, what's going on? What is this weird prayer group going on in the middle of the day? And then lo and behold, when they left the company, it became a full-blown prayer group. and
Right.
there's several people doing it. So there is a shift. And I understand what you're saying in terms of it's controversial for people who jumped on board this wave, because this wave has
Right.
been coming. We've seen it. We've seen how meditation has become completely normalized now, where everyone talks about meditation, whether it's TM or one of these apps that you can sign up for. And it's funny too, when you mentioned the Buddha and the badass without the Buddha, yeah, I immediately thought, and maybe you may not want to weigh in on this, is Facebook. Like, I felt like they were the badass without the Buddha aspect of it, right? Because they seemed like all they
Well,
wanted to do was they wanted to, like you said, disrupt them, change the world, but they didn't think about the Buddha aspect of it. Did I leap
well,
there?
no, you know what? It's so funny you brought that up. I just messaged my bank today and I told them I want to dump my Facebook shares.
Wow.
And I'm doing that because out of principle, I can't support Facebook.
Mm.
As a company, we're moving millions of our students off Facebook groups as a learning ecosystem onto a new software like Tribe.so. We're looking, my own people are figuring out how can we drop our Facebook ad spend, and in fact, and instead invest in companies like Twitter, where the founders actually are standing up for unity, standing up for
Wow.
truth, standing up against fake news.
That's
And
awesome.
so let me read you an opening sentence from chapter 6 of the book.
Okay.
This quote comes from Martin Luther King. And if you understand this quote, this is one of the quotes that inspired me to write the book. Martin Luther King said this: power without love is reckless and abusive,
Mm.
and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. Now let's go back a bit.
Yeah.
Power without love is reckless and abusive. That's the Buddha.
Mm.
Love without power is sentiment. Power without love is reckless and abusive. Sorry, that's the badass.
Okay.
And love without power is sentimental and anemic. That's the Buddha. When they are missing, they're opposite archetype. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. What
Mm.
MLK is saying is that you got to take a stand. You got to fight for what you believe in. Don't just think that love is going to solve anything, because love alone is sentimental and anemic. Love has to be combined with power.
Yeah.
And when power and love are combined, that's when we can truly create a just world and we can truly improve the human condition. The Buddha and the Badass simply explores methods to actually make that happen.
Wow. It's funny. I mean, like, this completely was unplanned and part of this conversation. And you bringing up the fact that your companies are jumping off Facebook, and then you saw Patagonia starting this whole
Yeah.
trend of several companies not being aligned with them. So it's so funny when you describe that. I'm like, my God, he's describing Facebook. That's essentially what you guys
Right.
what you did there in that statement. So let's delve a little bit into the book, because one of the things I think we're all guilty of is we're sort of creatures of habit. We all fall into routines. But routines aren't always a good thing, right?
It depends on your routine.
Right.
Routines can be, the right routine, the optimized routine can be really powerful. So firstly, the Buddha and the Badass is 9 different ideas. You do not have to read them in sequence. You can jump to whatever idea best resonates with you. But every idea combines spirituality with modern business. So you learn about OKRs, you learn about OODA loops, which is another amazing idea on rapid communication. You learn about applying foundational and organizational values. You learn about management. But there is a spiritual seed in each of these ideas that makes it different from how traditional business books would explain it. So there's one particular idea in here which I think is really worth touching on, because you just spoke about routines. One of America's top MBA professors is Professor Srikumar Rao, and he was a former professor at Columbia, Kellogg, London Business School.
So
And
terrible
Rao was
schools.
famous,
All terrible
of these
schools.
amazing Ivy League schools,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And Rao was famous for teaching a class on personal mastery, and his classes would have a long wait list to get into the class. Now, the question is, what were these MBA students so excited about? Rao was teaching them how to take philosophies from spiritual teachers and philosophers long dead and apply them to American business. Now, Rao's one of my mentors, and a couple of years ago, he came to me and he said, Vishen, we have to change the things that they're teaching in American business schools. And I said, Rao, what do you mean? And he goes, they need to teach true consciousness. And I said, but Sri Kumar, they do teach consciousness. And he goes, no, you're confusing things. What they teach is ethics. Ethics has been a requirement for business ever since the Enron scandal. Consciousness is different. Consciousness is a different way of looking at the world. And I said, well, give me an example. What do you mean by consciousness? And he said this. He said, business schools have to teach MBAs. They have to teach future entrepreneurs one thing. And that most important thing is this. Your life is not about your business. Rather, your life has to be about your personal growth. Your personal growth must come first. If your business grows to $1 billion, it doesn't matter. The question is, did you grow? If your business fails, doesn't matter. The question is, did you grow? We must put our personal growth first, our self-actualization as number one. Your business is nothing more than the greatest vehicle for your personal growth. Now, this is kind of interesting. Many entrepreneurs don't think that way. They put their business first. Yeah. But what Rao was really saying is that that's not the way you play it. Your business is nothing more than your boxing ring. Through your business, you're going to learn all the lessons of life that you need to learn to truly thrive. But you need to make the lessons the number one thing. You need to embrace your growth. And when you do this, what happens is you become unfuckwithable. Pain, failure doesn't slow you down. Successes don't go to your head. You become unfuckwithable, doing what you need to do to grow yourself and make your mark on the world. That is one of the key ideas in this book. Now, Abraham Maslow spoke about that. He spoke about Maslow's pyramid, and he said at the top of Maslow's pyramid, what do you have? You have self-actualization. And that's really what this is about. Designing your business, designing your career, designing whatever it is that you do in your 9 to 5 to ensure that you are becoming the best version of you every single day.
So let's dig into this. So say, how do you personally grow, but also run a successful company? Are there any kind of hacks along the way? I mean, obviously you wrote an entire book about it, so it's not as simple as an anecdote.
I actually wrote about it in The Code of the Extraordinary Mind, my first New York Times bestseller. So there are a couple of different things you can do. There are 5 things, okay? So chapter 5, make growth the ultimate goal. So there are 5 things which I recommend, which completely transform the way you work, okay? The first thing is sleep optimization, understanding the science of sleep, and understanding that sleep is not lazy. Sleep is actually a way for you to recover and put your body and your brain in peak states. The 6-phase meditation routine, this is a meditation I invented. It's being used by American sports stars in every major league, from the NFL. Tony Gonzalez is a big advocate of it. Wow. To the NFL. Reggie Jackson just came on my Instagram to talk about he uses the 6-phase. Bianca Andreescu uses the 6-phase. She beat Serena Williams, and she credited my book when she won the US Open. So the 6-phase is the meditation routine that puts your mind in peak states. That's number 2. Number 3 is optimize exercise routines. And there is one type of exercise that I strongly advocate, and that's super slow strength training. Doug McGuff popularized that in his book, Body by Science. If you do one exercise, 30 minutes a week, super slow strength training, it has some of the highest correlations in health markers and longevity. And it's only 30 minutes a week.
30 minutes for the entire week, or 30 minutes a day?
Yeah. 30 minutes a week.
Wow.
I kid you not, 30 minutes a week.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the next is optimize eating, fasting, and supplementation. It's understanding food, understanding fasting, understanding when to eat and what to eat. And the 5th is speed learning. Speed learning is how can you consume books? How can you learn faster and input information and retrieve information faster? If you can do those 5 things, the way you show up at work completely transforms. Many of the people I coach, when they start doing that, they end up saving an hour to 2 a day, because their minds and their brains are operating at such optimal levels of efficiency.
Wow. You know, what's funny, you started Mindvalley, I believe, was it 2003?
I registered a company called Mindvalley in 2003, but it did something different. We actually were a Web 2.0 company. We built the world's 2nd biggest social bookmarking engine. We experimented with software. The Mindvalley that we know today, which is the education company focused on health and wellness, that really took off in maybe 2013.
Which is still way ahead of the game, because you were doing things that no one else was even doing. Now it's pretty normal now. What did you see within 2003 and 2013 where you can see like, hey, wait a minute, there's something here? Because companies like that didn't exist. You must have seen, there must have been some markers.
Well, look, I was creating my own software company. .com bubble burst. I lost that. I got a job September 11 happened. The economy went to shit. I lost that. And so I found myself in a role where I was working for a company. I was 26 years old, and I had to sell software to lawyers. Now, what happened was it was such a horrible job that I sank into a depression.
Wow.
I took a class on meditation that transformed my life. It pulled me out of that depression. It optimized my brain to such a degree that I was just crushing it at work. And what happened is that in 4 months, I kept hitting target after target after target. I got promoted 3 times in 4 months. At 26, the founder made me director of sales, shipped me off to New York. And now at 26, I was leading this company's entire New York expansion. Now I stayed with the company for 18 months, and my brain and my mind was so in tune because of this grounding in meditation, in these spiritual arts, that I was able to take on 2 jobs in the company. I was VP of sales and VP of business development, crushing it at both. And then I felt a calling. And I thought, my God, like my life was failing before I started going deep into my mind. Why is it that I had to stumble upon this? Why is it that this isn't part of regular education? So I decided to quit and start a meditation website in 2003. Now, what inspired me is that in 2003, Time magazine put a lady meditating on the cover, and they wrote about the benefits of meditation. So that made me see this is going to be big. It was now on the cover of Time magazine. And then I believe Newsweek did the same thing. And then CBS News did a whole episode on meditation. So I dove in first. And I was embarrassed to tell my friends. I graduated from an elite university, the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. My friends were just doing the most incredible things in the world. I felt like the loser. I was like so lagging behind. I didn't tell my friends that I was teaching meditation. I couldn't.
That's
I was
funny.
embarrassed.
That was like people who have like this annoying, like they collect,
Right.
Hummels. They don't want to tell their friends they're collecting Hummels because it's embarrassing. But that was your thing. You were doing
Right.
meditation. Were any of your, like you said, were anyone in your circle at all doing meditation, or was this something you were just doing in solitude?
No, people thought it was some of my friends were concerned I joined a cult.
And when you said you stumble, what was the actual stumbling into meditation? Was it just reading something, or did someone mention something
Okay,
in
man,
passing?
Joe, you want to hear a really insane story?
Yeah.
Okay, but
I do.
those of you, people who are listening to this, I need you to just keep an open mind, okay? I'm going to come to that in a moment. But 2003, everyone thought meditation was a joke. 2018, Daniel Goleman releases a book called Altered Traits, and there he cites a really interesting statistic. 44% of the Fortune 100 now has meditation training for their employees. That's how much the world changed between 2003 and 2018. Today, meditation is everywhere in Silicon Valley. Meditation apps are worth $1 billion, and it is blowing up. Now, back to how I stumbled upon it. Okay, so first, I want you to understand this, okay? The people who think meditation or spirituality is bogus, there's actually a phenomenon on why they think so, despite the sheer amount of scientific evidence. It's called the pre-trance fallacy. What it says is that as we get to a rational level of thinking across the world, especially in America, in areas in America that embrace rational thinking, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, people tend to look down on religion. Religion is pre-rational. But because when you're at the rational level, you are so stuck at that level, you look at pre-rational ideas of spirituality, fundamentalist religion, and you look at post-rational, which is emerging new thoughts, the emerging philosophy, and you lump them as the same. And so you basically think that the idea that we have human intuition and we can tap into that for decision making, right? You equate that with magical thinking, like believing in fairies or believing that you were born a sinner and so on. And so it's called the pre-trance fallacy, and it's why some people in Wall Street and Silicon Valley look down on this. Now, that's changing, and it's changing because so much science is now coming into this field. Classic example, Newark College of Engineering, Professor John Michalowski wrote a book called Executive ESP. He did a series of studies and found that intuition, okay, you can test intuition. It's called a Zener card test. They hold up 5 cards. You have to guess the shape on the opposite end of the card. Have you seen the movie Ghostbusters?
Of course.
Okay, do you remember the opening scene in Ghostbusters?
The electric shock scene, yes.
Right. It's who is it? It's Bill Murray.
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray is doing that Zener test card to pick up women. Opening scene of Ghostbusters. Now, that's a real test that they pioneered at Duke University. what Mihalaski found is that CEOs who score well on that test, also, it correlates to, they also tend to do well with increasing profitability of their company. In short, there's a direct correlation between your ability to guess the shape at the back of a card that you can't see and your ability to build a healthy company.
Wow.
Intuition is what he points that to. Now, I wanted to share that with you because now we're going to segue into my story. So I took a class on meditation to access altered states. Altered states of mind is when you can slow down your brainwave frequency to access these altered states. Altered states of mind have gotten really popular thanks to books like Stephen Kotler's Stealing Fire, where Kotler, an incredible journalist, writes about how the altered state economy is now $1 trillion economy. Everyone from CEOs doing ayahuasca to Marines doing neurotraining are tapping into altered states to enhance their performance. Okay, so altered states is a real thing. Check out Stealing Fire. Now, I went for a class that showed you how to use altered states to increase your intuition. Class was amazing. I go back to San Francisco, and back then in 2003, we had to go to the San Francisco Public Library, pull out the yellow pages for the territory we were assigned to. In my case, it was San Antonio, Texas. I typically had to call every lawyer from A to Z in the phone book, right? But I learned how to access altered states, how to go within. And as I did that, I would move my finger over the yellow pages and pretend as if I could feel an impulse on who to call. I would then only call the attorneys that I felt that impulse.
No way.
Overnight,
That's
I
how you
doubled
did
my
that?
sales.
No way.
Yeah. Overnight, I doubled my sales. Overnight.
Wow.
Now remember, I'm an engineer. When you're doing sales like that, you are measuring everything: the number of phone calls, the number of assistants you have to get through, the number of lawyers who pick up the phone, the number of lawyers who give you 10 minutes, the number of lawyers who ask for the follow-up call. All of that is empirical. Overnight, my hit rate doubled.
Wow.
I didn't change anything else. Within 1 week, I done double my sales. And I thought, coincidence, this can't be real. But I was making double the money right now because I was on commission only, right?
Okay.
So I did it again. And this time I tried bringing in other tools and I doubled my sales again. And I doubled my sales again. And that's when I realized this is pretty freaking awesome. And I went to my boss and I told my boss said, "What are you doing, man? Like, how are you like hitting all of these records?" And I said, I think they call it ESP. And he goes, "Nah, that's bullshit. But can you keep doing it?"
So it's a good thing they didn't have you committed at that point. So it must have been a good boss that he was like, "Hey, listen, I don't care the fact that what you're doing to get this done, but as long as you're getting it done, I don't care."
Right.
That's amazing. I wonder, like, have you always been so open about this kind of because you said, Michigan, you're surrounded by really successful people, really smart.
No, I could never talk about this, but guess what? This book just hit #1 on Wall Street Journal, business hardcovers. So now that I have the #1 hardcover business book in America, fuck yeah, I can be open about this.
And how, I would love to know, tell me about some of these friends in your, your Wolverine circle there. What do they think about you now that, maybe you tell them like, "Hey, listen, I was afraid to say this to you, 15, 20 years ago."
Well, they're now all big fans of Mindvalley, right?
Oh, that's amazing.
So, yeah.
Let's talk about, before I let you go, about The Buddha and the Badass. Who is this book for? Like, is there someone out there like, this book is perfect? I mean, obviously, most authors say anybody can read this book, but who do you think this Buddha and the Badass would help immediately?
If you're an entrepreneur, if you're someone who cares passionately about giving your gifts to the world, whether it's the code you're writing, the app you're building, the book you're writing, the business you're creating, the team you're leading, you want to make a mark on the world, this book is for you. This book is about how to magnify your mark, to multiply that mark by factors of 10, and to do it by moving into the state where it almost seems as if you are blessed by a benevolent universe, that everything is acting in your favor. And even when things go wrong, you learn to look at it from a philosophical point of view, where the failure becomes a lesson. You gain that lesson, you shift, and you move on. You move on seeing the elegance and the beauty of that lesson. This makes you highly resilient. It allows you to move towards your goals with ease. And you know what? The idea of hard work or struggle or suffering starts shifting out of your life. You find that you attract the right connections. You find that you have insights. You find that you're sleeping better, your relationships get better. You find that your health gets better. Now, you will see this in me. Google pictures of me before 2016. You'll see I get younger every year. The people who follow me, they're often mystified by this.
They don't ask who your
But it's
plastic
true.
surgeon is? Who's your plastic
What?
surgeon, Vishen? I don't know.
Never had that. It's meditation, exercise, sleep. It's getting into this flow of how I work. You see, we've trained to believe that hard work is necessary for success. We've trained to design workplaces, companies where work extracts from you. Right. Every time you work, there is stress, there is tension, there's anxiety, and that's slowly killing the cells of your body. But what if work can fuel you? What if work can make you healthier? What if work can be easy? What if work can be a game? What if the same level of pleasure and relaxation and rest and bliss that you get hiking in Yosemite, you get from doing your day-to-day job? That's what this book is about.
This is good just not for entrepreneurs. This is also good for people who work for companies, right? A lot of these skills are not just are translatable to
entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs.
Okay.
I don't like to make that division. I think especially in American society, there's this weird thing where we glorify entrepreneurs. But if you look at it, many of the people making the biggest impact in the world are people working for massive organizations like Google or NASA, right? So you can be a scientist, you can be an engineer, you can be leading a team at a massive organization. This book helps you become a better leader. And this book combines spiritual philosophy with science, with my own practical experiments. You see, what makes me different is I'm not a consultant. I've built a company. This year we will hit 100 million in revenue, and I've never taken a drop of VC capital.
Wow.
Completely on my own, 100 million in revenue. I'm the sole founder, and now I've started like creating an ESOP pool and so on. But I was able to do that by rethinking the rules of how a business is supposed to work.
That's fantastic. Does it make you feel good that you see a lot of these companies now that have a socially conscious bend that didn't exist 15, 20 years ago, pre-bubble? Like, that must make you feel good to be like, hey, listen, I'm on this path, but there's also these other companies and these people who feel the same way that, right. Yes, we all want to make money. We all want to make $100 million. But at the same time, we also want to help people and help people around us. At the end of the day, that's got to be the win for you.
In the chapter that starts with that Martin Luther King quote, I speak about a concept called humanity plus and humanity minus. Now, first, just a caveat, right? I don't want people to think that, okay, I have it all figured out. My company is successful and so on. It's been freaking tough. I've been bankrupt nearly 3 times. Before Mindvalley, I had 3 other companies and ideas that failed. So I go through these trials and tribulations like everyone else. I failed. I have business partners screw me over. I've seen things I've poured years into die on me and go bankrupt. All of that happens. Failure, though, isn't bad if you're able to learn from it. This book isn't going to make you immune to failure. Like how an Aikido master can take anything you throw at him and shift that energy. It teaches you how to shift that energy like an Aikido master. And so failure becomes nothing more than rocket fuel towards your next success without breaking you, without putting you into a depression, without destroying your self-confidence. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there. Now, your question was on conscious business. So I coined a term called humanity plus versus humanity minus. And I basically say this, look, the fact of the matter is the world doesn't need more companies that are designed to simply sell you more shit through persuading you that you need things that you don't really need, right? We've created GDP is bullshit. I mean, it's a dumb measure that is outdated. It comes from the 1950s or 60s, and it had its place. But the fact is, if everyone on the planet lived like the average American today, we would need 4.5 planet Earths to sustain our species. It's not, the old ways of doing business don't cut it anymore. I believe that everyone today needs to focus their power on businesses, products, services, inventions, innovations that can better the planet. And better the planet means 2 things to me. Number 1, moving us towards becoming net positive to nature. This means how can we design the human experience so that for every year we are on the planet is actually getting healthier.
Sustainable products you're talking about there, right? The sustainable fashion.
Sustainable products. And It may sound nearly impossible now, but I believe with the right technologies, with the right way of re-envisioning our human experience, we can get there. And the second thing is moving us towards becoming a more collaborative, unified species. How can we ensure that we are not spending so much ridiculous amounts of energy output and money on ideas that belong in the past, like massive military budgets? I mean, it's always puzzled me. How does America spend so much on a military budget when it is the most powerful country in the world, while 550,000 Americans are homeless on the streets, right? It just makes no sense where we apply our money. Why is it that so many smart young men and women go and work for companies like McDonald's and Coca-Cola that create artificial demand, getting you to put in your body crap you do not need that make us sicker? And we celebrate these companies. But today, we know what high fructose corn syrup does to our body. We know what fake food does to our body. We need to wake up. The Buddha and the Badass is a wake-up call for people so that we can understand the difference between a humanity plus company, a company that's bettering the world multiple generations down, and a humanity minus company, a company that's extracting from our collective health, extracting from our sense of unity, extracting from the environment to create BS that, as a species, we don't really need. And we need to take the best brains in the world and shift them from humanity minus to humanity plus.
That's awesome. Well, I like to end every interview with a happy ending. So, as you know, Vishen, we've got civil unrest, we've got a pandemic we're all dealing with. Someone who's obviously well attuned to the spiritual and the business side of things, what can you tell people about getting through this time in our life, getting through 2020, seeing the other side? Are there any words you can tell people, be like, listen, I know it's bad now, but it's going to get better. Put a
Right.
comma or a period at the end of this happy ending here.
Okay, well, if you want me to say that, I know it's bad now, but it's going to get better.
Yeah, okay.
But no, let me actually give you a spiritual idea that has really helped me. And this comes from Reverend Michael Beckwith. Okay, Reverend Michael Beckwith is the spiritual teacher at the Agape Spiritual Center in LA. He is an incredible Black spiritual teacher. He's famous for being the spiritual teacher in the world today who has been featured in the most number of documentaries. Okay, he's a dear friend of mine, and he taught me a concept called Kensho and Satori. He says that there are two ways we learn, two ways sort of life speaks to us and life helps us grow. The first is Kensho, which is growth through pain. And the second is Satori, which is growth through insight. A Kensho moment, think of it as this way. Your soul, or whatever higher power you want to believe in, starts to understand that you are on the wrong path and knows that it needs to steer you back towards where you are meant to be. And so your soul or a higher power or whatever you believe in breaks something in your life. But in that Kensho moment, you grow through that suffering. You might end up in hospital, but when you come out of that hospital, you understand that you can never take your health for granted again. You may have a business fail on you, but after you bounce back from that failure, from that bankruptcy, you understand how to be a better entrepreneur. You might have someone crush your heart, but after that, you understand exactly how you want to show up in a relationship. Kensho is growth through pain. But there's another way to grow, and that is Satori, growth through insight. When you practice meditation, when you read, when you pour yourself into personal growth, you gain more insights. And so rather than your soul having to break something about your life, you find the answer yourself elegantly, with ease, through an inspired thought. We want to train ourselves. The act of self-actualization is to really train yourself to move into growth through insight so that you don't have to be broken through Kensho, through growth through suffering. Now, let's look at that from a larger context. If that idea, and does that idea resonate with you in any way?
Yeah, no, I mean, as well as especially the fact that you bring up the growth through pain. I think right now we all have to, we're
Exactly.
all doing that.
Right. Now, if that applies to the individual, what if it also applies to the species level? What if what we're going through right now with quarantine, with the fight against racism, with unemployment, with the economy collapsing or about to collapse, as many people say, what if this is a mass collective Kensho moment for our species so we can wake up? We can decide who are the leaders we're going to vote for. We can decide what are the companies we're going to support. We can decide what are the principles on which we are going to govern. and we are going to enforce our laws. We can decide how we're going to collaborate as a species. We're going to decide how we're going to fix the planet, fix healthcare, take care of the disadvantaged. I believe we're going through a species-wide Kensho moment. Now, I call Kensho moments the beautiful destruction. Sometimes in life, you have to destroy what is merely good so that what is truly great can enter. When you go through a personal Kensho moment, a part of your life gets destroyed, but often something far greater comes in. My first 3 businesses that failed, each was a Kensho moment that allowed me to start my current business. Likewise, as a species, I believe we are going through a beautiful destruction. And what that means is that at the other end of this tunnel, there's going to be amazing insights, amazing inspiration, amazing new ways of life and living. And we are going to become better than we've ever been before. And so it's going to be painful for a while, but I cannot wait to see what's on the other end.
His name is Vishen Lakhiani. The new book, The Buddha and the Badass, is out now. Vishen, thank you very much for this time. This has been enlightening in so many different ways. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you.
This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio. Find out more at ForbesBooksRadio.com.